Welcome to Megabucks Radio. Conversations with successful entrepreneurs, sharing their tips and strategies for success. Real-world ideas that can put megabucks in your bank account. Here's your host, Nina Hirschberger.
Hello and welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Nina Hirschberger, and today my guest is Travis Lee. Travis is an internationally known expert on direct mail. I've known Travis for years. He is the king of 3D mail. Sometimes people call it lumpy mail. I like to call it mail that gets opened kind of thing. So Travis, welcome to the call.
Hey, thanks so much for having me here this morning. I'm looking forward to it and hoping to give our listeners a little bit of inspiration and a little bit of marketing know-how, and hopefully we can all get through this in the coming weeks and months and be better for it on the other side.
So before we start, because I'm a story gal, I love to hear the stories and what's really working. But before we do that, Travis, give me your background. How in the world did you get into direct mail?
I'll give you the Cliff Notes version, right? You know my backstory to a certain degree. I know you spoke with my dad a week or two ago on one of these same calls. But I started, so my dad started a company, didn't start it, but became owner of it in the early 90s. This was long before I was ever in the workforce, right? And he stumbled upon this guy named Dan Kennedy. And I know you know who Dan is, and I'm guessing most of the people on this call at least have a familiarity with him. But back in those days, this was about 1993-ish, Dan really, and still does, really beat the drum for direct mail, right? You got to have a direct mail system. You got to have your 3-step system to get clients, keep them coming back, the whole 9 yards, right? And so my dad, Keith, saw Dan talk about this, and he bought in. He's like, all right, we're going to figure out how to do direct mail. And so they figured it out, right? And they started sending out letters with dollar bills, and they started sending out letters with fake dollar bills, and they started sending out letters with little bags of aspirin attached to them. Well, why do I bring that up now? Well, I was a teenager at the time, and in order to get spending money or to be on a traveling sports team or gas money when I got to be 16 and finally had a car, I would stuff envelopes, right? I think I started off at about 10 cents an envelope, and I think I topped out at a whopping 25 cents an envelope by the time I was in high school. And I would stuff envelopes, right? That was one of the things that I would do in order to get my spending money, right? Or to, pay off a loan, quote unquote, that maybe one of the parents had paid for a sports team that I had to work off, right? So that's how we kind of got started. And that was in a company called American Retail Supply, which Keith has since sold. So let's now fast forward to around 2000, let's say, 2005-ish, 2006-ish, somewhere in that area. Might have been 2007-ish. The years all fade together now at this point, to a certain degree, right? But so fast forward now 15, 17 years later, and I had come to work for him. And I was working in the family business. I'd just gotten my marketing degree from Washington State University, and I was tagging along to a mastermind group, Bill Glazer's mastermind group, who I know you know, right? And we had gone with this idea of, we've got this, we're doing all this direct mail for the one business. We're doing all these crazy things like attaching foreign banknotes and using little bags of aspirin. We actually sent, I want to say it was around 700 or 800 Magic 8 balls. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
So we sent Magic 8 balls. So we were doing all this crazy direct mail stuff, mainly to get new customers, but then also to do other things, convert them. We put on boot camps, and so we were doing all this crazy direct mail stuff, to get people to buy stuff, right, in all kinds of different areas. And so we went to this mastermind group, and this mastermind group had seen this crazy direct mail stuff we'd been doing forever, right? And we came to them with the idea of, if we sold the knickknacks, what we now call 3D mail, which we didn't call it at the time, we didn't know what it was called back then, but if we sold you and other people these little knickknacks, would you guys be interested in buying them? Because at the time we had a big warehouse, and it was a big warehouse full of stuff, right? It didn't really matter what it was, but we had a big warehouse, and we could buy in bulk, break the bulk, sell it to smaller, right? They're just a quintessential distribution company. And we figured with our relationships in manufacturing that we could go and have these little trinkets made, right? And really, like I said at the time, we called them trinkets, knickknacks. We didn't know what to call them at the time, and and so we were at this mastermind group, and by the time we had presented this idea, we could have walked out with orders for our what we now call 3D mail, right? And so this was about 2007-ish. And so by 2008, we had started what we now call 3D mail, which is supplying mainly small business owners, but we've worked with some big companies, but mainly small independent, mom and pop, business owners with the things that they need to make sure that their direct mail gets opened and read. Because if you send direct mail and it doesn't get open, it can't get acted upon. And you said it right at the top. I think you said direct mail that gets results or direct mail that gets opened, and you're exactly right. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of it, right? I was kind of born into the company, and then we evolved and we started selling the stuff, and now here we are 13 years later, and we do everything under the sun when it comes to direct mail, from little itty bitty cheap and dirty postcards to big boxes that cost $50, $60, $80 a piece with all kinds of stuff inside, right? And everything in between. So that's, like I said, the short version of how we got involved with it.
Man, that's fascinating. What you don't know probably about me is I had the same kind of experience. I grew up, my grandmother, you're too young to know this, but my grandmother had a Mimeo letter shop. And so as a kid, I would go and lick the stamps and lick the envelope and stuff. As a kid, she printed out on the mimeograph, and we'd stuff and stamp, and so I grew up in that business as well. So, okay, Travis, so let's fast forward. First of all, here's the thing. Direct mail is too expensive. This is 2020. We're in the middle of a pandemic. There's no way that I could afford to send out direct mail. I got to use email if I even do that. So what's your response to those kind of business owners?
It is something that has kind of been coming for maybe the last 10 or 12 years now, right, is this oncoming assault of all things digital, right, whether it be email, whether it be, any of the social media platforms, all those things like that. Really, the truth of the matter is those things, those places only get more crowded. And what happens when they get more crowded? As a general rule, prices go up, right? So you've got this giant wave of people transitioning from the offline to the online, which is driving up prices. Now, immediate current conditions right now, okay, maybe the prices are dropping somewhat, right, in some industries. They're going up in others, right? But by and large, we're seeing this giant shift go over there. But at the same time, you've got this media that has literally been around for over 100 years. I mean, I think Sears and Roebuck was kind of the first company to do this in a wide national scale, and that was like in the 1880s, 1890s, right? So direct mail is nothing new. The first direct mail letter goes back to around the 1500s when a church wanted to raise money for it was either an organ or a bell. I can't remember now. It was either a church bell or an organ. Not important, right? But you have everyone rushing over here. And when I'm doing business, when I'm calculating, when I'm figuring out what I want to do, I typically look at what the herd is doing and try to avoid it, right? So the reason direct mail still works now is, first off, number one is it's not nearly as inundated. We are not pulverized with it. We are not getting 200 letters a day like we get 200 or 2,000 emails a day, right? So it's far, far less cluttered. Number two, people still enjoy checking their mailbox, and most people still do it on a daily basis, right? So we still go out to the mailbox mostly every day. We still get and receive our mail and sort it every day, and we look at it, and there's way less of it, so we don't have to be there's just not as much competition, right? And then the last thing I'll say about that is, it really comes down to what your market prefers. And in most instances, and this goes all the way down now to the millennials, is most people still like to receive direct mail. It's a more trustworthy form of marketing. And especially if you're going after an older or affluent group, that makes a huge difference, right? there's still that stigma of anybody can put up a website, anyone can send an email, anyone can do, right? You don't need to be a quote-unquote real business to do that stuff, right? Whereas if I have a stamp and I lick it and I put it on we don't lick them anymore now. They're all sticky, like they're stickers, right? But, play along. If I got a letter, I put it in an envelope, I put it into the mail, I send it to somebody, that gives it the quote-unquote real feel to it. So there's a lot of, personality that can be brought out to it. There's the personal touch that can be brought out in direct mail that you just can't get in a lot of those digital media arenas at this time.
That is so smart. It's that personality. I always say I love small lists for direct mail because you can get super creative. Probably the most creative thing I ever mailed was and it would be so apropos right now. I mailed a roll of toilet paper, in a clear plastic bag. In fact, I always seed my own name whenever I'm going to do some direct mail myself, and so I seeded my name. It goes to my office. And I walk in, and the person there, so my office, actually, I have my mail going to the UPS store. So I walk in, and and literally they say, "You will not believe what you got in the mail today." And you just don't get that same kind of results for the email or anything.
You're exactly right, and we really do try to have some of that fun, creative, unique stuff, right? Like I said at the beginning. We can do all things direct mail, but where we really specialize, I'll give you an example, and I know you've seen it, right? We have these little trash cans, right? And so they're little plastic trash cans. They're about the size of a big cup of coffee, right? A big ceramic mug, much, much lighter than that because they're made out of real inexpensive plastic. But we'll send out trash cans in the mail, right? And how do we do that? Well, there's 1,000 different ways and reasons why we could send a little trash can. But if we've got, let's say we sent out a letter to somebody and they didn't reply, right? And they were whatever. We sent out a letter. Now we're going to send letter number 2. Your headline reads, "Since you threw away my last letter, I thought I would save you the trouble. Make sure you read this very important message." Well, now if a little plastic trash can comes into your mailbox, it's got postage on the outside, it's got a mailing label on the outside, the lid is taped closed, and now this little blue trash can is arriving in your mailbox like a box would or a tube mailer. Who is not going to open that, right? And what happens
particularly as we're, hunkered down in our houses. Are you kidding?
Exactly. Well, and you brought it up. You said, you won't be, the UPS store employees say you won't believe what you got today. Well, that happens in any office or any home, right? So, if I get something unique at my house and it's addressed to me, well, my wife sees it too, and now she wants me to see it. And so it's, instead of being in the stack of mail, it's like off to the side with all the, away from all the other stuff. And now we're selling way more in a vacuum, right? Because now we have undivided attention, multiple people have seen it, and that's, I compare it to Super Bowl advertising, right? Super Bowl ads are so expensive, not necessarily because the football game is all that good, but because you're guaranteed people to see it. And if you can guarantee people to see your advertising, that's the number one goal that we have to achieve. And so it's like a Super Bowl ad, but not for $5.5 million.
Well, you're absolutely right. So let's turn the corner. So let's give some real examples right now during the pandemic that people, business owners, are using this and what's happening. Can you give me some stories?
Yeah, let's talk about one. So we work with a lot of bankruptcy attorneys, right? And I won't get into why. Maybe I'll get into a little bit reason as to why we do, but we work with a lot of them. And the reason being is that with direct mail, everything starts with the mailing list. If you don't have a good targeted mailing list, then you can't really mail anything, right? So it all starts with who we're mailing to. And whatever your opinion on attorneys may or may not be, the ones that I work with are absolutely fabulous. But the great thing about a bankruptcy attorney is that let's say you've been sued by American Express or Discover Bank because you haven't been paying your credit card. Well, that is a notice of public record. Well, now we can go and get those records. Now, I'll give you some other examples too, where there's public data that we can mine and then do things, right? But what we're able to do now is we're able to pull that information, We can do the same thing with people who may be foreclosed on, right? Now, and we can get that information. We can mail those people, right? So what most attorneys in a bankruptcy attorney do is they run billboards or they run television ads or radio ads in the hope that the 0.001% that has the need for them at that time is listening. Well, we take it a step further. We now have a list of people who we know have the problem that we can solve. Well, here's a little bit of an issue right now. So all of those things are still going on in most of the country, right? People are still filing bankruptcies. People are still not filing bankruptcies, but the attorneys help them do that. People are still having, lawsuits against them and things like that, but they cannot move forward, right? Because in many cases, the courthouses are closed, right? So my advice to my attorneys, and they've all been taking it, is to continue to mail these people, because the people that call up and now have questions and want to do their free consultation, right? They're going to find out relatively quickly that this thing cannot move forward because the courts are closed, right? But my advice to them is to continue to market, because even though you cannot move forward with the thing that you get paid for, which is for most of these attorneys filing bankruptcy, right? Even though you can't move forward with that, you can still get the phone to ring. You can still establish a relationship. And those of you that don't know attorney marketing, once they contact us, a lot of the regulations that attorneys have go away, right? So there's a lot of front-end marketing that we cannot do, but once they contact us, there's more stuff that we can do. I'll just leave it at that. It's a big rigmarole. But now we can bring them in. We can show them our expertise. We can maybe send them a book on the topic. We can send them a weekly email on the topic. We can give them updates on what's going on. Because for many of these people, the thing isn't going to go away. The thing has just been paused, right? So Discover Bank is still going to want their money in August. They may, you know what I mean? They can't get it now, but they're going to want it in August, right? And so now that gives us the time to position ourselves as an expert, to continue to have potential clients coming to us, so that when the floodgates do open, because they will open again, and when that does happen, we're not one of those companies that now has to turn the marketing pump back on and start, like Zig Ziglar with his prime in the pump thing, right? Now, okay, the economy's open, let's get it going now. That's not what you want to be doing. Now, you may not want to have the thing on full blast right now, but you've got to have some marketing going on. So when things do relax and you can start doing the things that make you money, you don't have to run back to the back and start pumping priming the pump again. It's already primed. So that's what I'm telling a lot of my people to do, is continue to do the marketing that makes sense, right? Now, you may not want to do all of it. Some things we can't do. There are no events. Nina, I know you do events yourself. There are no events going on, right? Which is one of our biggest expenses, was going to trade shows and events and that kind of stuff. We just don't get to do that anymore. We can't, right? But there's other things that we can do. So what are the marketing things that you can do to keep the pump primed? It doesn't have to be at 100%. Maybe it's at 25, maybe it's at 45, whatever it is for your company, so that when we are allowed and all this pent-up buying fever is going to start again, we are there to take advantage of it and not having to run back and say, oh, I should have been marketing this whole time. So that's just one example. I'll take a breath, get a drink of water, and let you comment.
Well, Travis, what you just explained was what we call in the industry getting a cold list. So buying a list. Give me an example of a business owner who's using their warm list, somebody who already came in as a prospect or something. Do you have any example of that?
Yes, so we talked about it a little bit before we started recording, but a great example of this would be like a dental office, right? So a dental office, depending on when your state went into shutdown mode, if it did, you all of a sudden had all kinds of patients that couldn't come in, right? Anywhere from really inexpensive, checkups that may or may not make you a ton of money to, again, if you're a dentist and you're doing, a $20,000, $30,000 procedure in someone's mouth, and now you can't do it because it wasn't deemed an emergency, right? Maybe it was, cosmetic type of stuff, or it wasn't deemed an emergency. Well, now you have all these patients who have just dropped out, right? Well, my advice for those people is to go back and look at those patients, the ones who have, and most businesses have this, so take out dentist and put in your business. Find the highest value people who you cannot service right now, and be sure you are over communicating with them. Because when we are open back up and the pent-up demand is unleashed upon our businesses, you do not want to be worrying about the $20 jobs, the $200 jobs, the $2,000 jobs if you've got 30,000 jobs sitting back, right? So my advice to people in that regard is to look at your client list, look at your patient list, look at your prospect list. Prioritize them however you need to. ABC 1, 2, 3. My big general rule of thumb is the very basic 80-20 rule. 80%, 20%, right? You get 80% of your business from 20% of your business. Right now, I'd probably even take it to like 90-10 and look at the 10% who have the ability and the want to frankly, give you money the quickest and easiest when this thing is over, right? And then they're able to unleash that pent-up buying power, and prioritize your business and your follow-up with them that way. So if I'm that dentist, yes, I want my patients coming back. I want them all to come back. But I do not have enough capacity to squeeze 3 months of closures into the next 3 weeks, right? Just can't happen. I mean, there's only so many chairs and so many hours in the day. So my priority is going to be looking at those individual customers, patients, whomever, that have the ability to pay me and pay me the most, the quickest, right? So it's going to be those higher value things. And now I'm going to be in extra communication with them. I'm going to be sending them emails. I'm going to be, you mentioned before we recorded, an Invisalign dentist that you work with who is doing that. And Invisalign is a fairly high value deal for most dentists or orthodontists, right? So they're going to prioritize those over the other ones because, I mean, you have to. There is no way you can get 100% of that business back right away. So you've got to prioritize. So prioritize, like I said, at the very least 80-20. I'd probably go more like 90-10 or 95-5 and really concentrate on those ones that have the ability to bring you cash the quickest.
Okay, Travis, there's almost two things that we're talking about there. So you've got patients who've already been scheduled. They're in their process right now. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe they're doing a smile makeover. And so you've only done, a portion of it, and they're on a payment plan. So you've got to certainly communicate with that. I'm also thinking about those who came in for the free consult, did the whole evaluation, and did not accept the plan and left. Those are ideal ones to be reaching out with right now. So I'll give you my prime example. I did that same thing with Invisalign. I went to an orthodontist. I said, I'm interested in Invisalign. Got a free consult. He did all the analysis and the x-rays and, went down all of the teeth and all this and gave me a little sheet and said, it's going to be $4,000. And here's the payment plan. I walk out and never again do I ever hear from him. I don't get a piece of direct mail. I don't get a phone call. I don't get an email. I get nothing. He let me walk away without having any kind of follow-up. So that's a second kind. I think of my hairdresser. That's one thing a lot of Facebook people are talking about is, they're going to see what color everybody really is.
Yeah, we'll find out how many non-blondes there really are.
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't have gray, so they're going to see the same color. But, I'm thinking, how is she going to squeeze this all in to get her hair cut as quickly as we're going to need to get it cut? If nothing more. I mean, I'm not even talking color. I'm not talking, but I never heard anything from them. So the point is, whether you put a piece of direct mail in the mail, send me a little newsletter, send me a little anything, or you call me, or you email, but something.
Communicate.
No communication. No.
And that's going to be the key for most of these companies right now, especially the ones that are shuttered and cannot work, is to be communicating with your customers, your patients, your members, whomever they are, and then communicating with that upper shelf client, right? Your example is perfect, both of them. I mean, you've got to be communicating with them. Because if you don't, you run the risk of them going somewhere else. You know, your Invisalign dentist, the orthodontist that you consulted with, you know, now might be a great time, had you know, collected information and sent something out to you, to maybe give you a 25% discount if you pay now and have your services done later, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in a position where I still have good cash flow as a household or an individual, and there's still plenty of people out there that have not lost their jobs, that are literally twiddling their thumbs, collecting paychecks still with nowhere to spend it, right? And they'd be more than happy to pay you $3,000 now rather than $4,000 later, and maybe put off the procedure for a couple weeks or a couple months, because they're going to want that bargain, right? They're going to want that extra value. So, you know, I know you spoke with Bruce, and I think he's going to be on one of these calls here that you put out there. They're doing something very similar. Bruce is a photographer. Those of you that I'm kind of skipping ahead here, they're selling gift cards. But they're giving them, I think, 25 or 35% on their dollar, right? So if they buy a $500 gift card, they're getting $650, right? And you know, he serves a fairly affluent client base, lots of business owners who, you know, may or may not have had their paychecks taken away, but they're selling enough of them, and the buyer feels like they're getting a great value, and he gets cash right now to survive. So it's a win-win for everybody. So what are some of the ways you can make either of those examples work in your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think about, you're talking about the Invisalign. I would even if they said to me, you know, we're going to schedule in August or September, because we got to quickly service certain things. If you're willing to wait, so it's the reason why. You and I both know in marketing, there's always got to be a reason. Obviously, the coronavirus can be a reason, but it also can be because you're allowing us to schedule you later on and fill our calendar when we're not as busy. That's the reason why. So that would be great. My hairdresser, you know, it could be some sort of, all you need is a haircut. You don't need a coloring. So I'm going to put you in here. This is the reason why. Yep. So Travis, any more really cool, creative things that you're seeing happen in your part of the country out there?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback on the one, I think, you know, we still do a lot of lost customer direct mail pieces, right? So this kind of piggybacks on what we spoke about here. But now is a great time to be talking to. So we've really talked about two different things right now. We've talked about prospecting, right, with the lawyers and that kind of stuff. Then we talked about the dentist example. What do we do with our current patients or members or customers? Well, what about those what we call lost clients, who bought or purchased from you and now haven't bought anything again, right? So they're lost. So for a dentist, the loss, that one's easy. I like to use dentist examples because everyone goes to the dentist and everyone knows how they kind of operate, right? But if you're supposed to go to your dentist every 6 months, well, let's use a different one. Let's use an auto repair shop. You're supposed to go to get your oil changed I think now it's every 6 months or 4,000 miles, depending on your car, right? Well, if I've got a list of people who previously did business with me, and I know their last oil change date, and they haven't come in, and they're supposed to do it every 6 months, and month 7 hits, well, now that person is lost. So now we're going a little bit deeper into your customer files, but who are the people who once gave us money, who aren't giving us money, that we can maybe make an offer to them, right? And so we do lots of fun things with this. We've got little plastic boomerangs that we mail. So we put a real boomerang it's plastic, but, you know, boomerang from Australia, right? We put it into an envelope, and we mail that to them, and the headline reads, "Nina, we want you back. We haven't seen you in 8 months at XYZ Auto Repair Shop, and, your Chevy Blazer needs to have blah, blah, blah," right? And we send them an offer, right? So those are some of the other things that we're seeing work really well right now, as well as to even go a little bit deeper into that customer list and see if you can get some of those past customers to kind of reemerge and boil up to the top.
You know, it's interesting you brought up the auto repair, because I actually did an interview last week with a guy who owns the largest independent auto repair place in all of Texas, northern Texas. I think he's got 38,000 square feet, and they're busy. I said, "How are you busy?" He said, "Because we're marketing. We send out direct mail. We do those things." Let's say you even farm. Let's go into a real estate kind of example. realtors are known for farming a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I live in a particular neighborhood. Let's say you're an auto repair guy. So you talked about lost souls. Sometimes I call it reactivation, same thing. But you could farm an area saying, look, we're still open. We're still changing the oil. We're still, fixing the car. You might be home now, and now's a good time. You don't need your car. Did you get your transmission flushed?
Yep.
So you could literally every door direct mail, right?
Yep.
A community, an area where it would fit your ideal customer.
Yeah, I mean, some of those. I mean, you're if you're a business that's still allowed to be open, and you're kind of at the mercy of people's schedules, a lot like auto repair is, right? No one wants to go to the auto repair shop, right? No one wants to, but if you can create campaigns, maybe you come and pick up their car for them, so they don't even have to leave, right? What are some of the creative ways that if you're in one of those industries that is kind of gets put off, and you're always, I don't want to go do that. Now's a great time to do that if you can, right? Again, if you're still open, the auto repair shop guy is a perfect example of that, right? A client of his that may put off an oil change for 2 or 3 or 4 months, or the transmission flush, or whatever it may be, that person is very likely to be way more open to that right now for all the reasons you just said, right? We've got the time and we're open.
Yeah, landscaper. In fact, the other day I talked to a guy who works for a swimming pool company. Now, we are in Indiana. Yes. Indiana in April is not the warmest time of the year. They are slammed busy because they're outside, so they don't have to be inside. And because everybody is tired of being inside, then they want to get their pools open. Are you kidding? April. He says they're going crazy to get their pools up, but in the moment you open a pool in the Indiana in April, you got to heat that pool. And so now they're paying money even to keep that pool heated. So so the bottom line with this, and I'm looking at the clock, Travis, and we are winding down, but the bottom line is there really is hope. You just got to get out of your own way. I also say, you talk about a mastermind with Bill Glazer and other very, very smart. I think that's one of the most critical things coming out of here. You have to align yourself. You have to connect with people who are doers, not doomers, I call them.
Yep.
So there have to be somebody who, if I sit in my office and all I think about is what's in my head, guess what? I'm not going to be able to do anything because I can't come up with any other creative. I have to talk to Travis. I have to talk to Keith. I have to talk to Bruce. I have to talk to these people, get connected with these people. So that's all of the most important things. So, Travis, is there anything else as we're finishing up this interview that I should have asked, that I didn't ask, and one last thing that you want to talk about, or are we good?
No, I mean, I would just say you said it right there at the end. I think the biggest thing is to not become paralyzed, right? Not think, woe is me. Think creatively. Think, how can I use this? How can I reconfigure? You don't necessarily need to reconfigure what you do. How can I reconfigure the offer of what I do to get some cash flow going? I've been telling all my clients, you are in survival mode. You need to get to break even as soon as humanly possible. So what can we do to keep cash flow coming in, right? And so that, again, using Bruce the photographer as an example, he hasn't changed how he takes pictures. He's just changed how he sold and offered how to take those pictures, right? And so how can you think creatively? How can you think out of the box? Everything should be on the table. This is not the time for, well, we've never done that before, and that's not how it's done in this industry, and all those excuses you and I hear 1,000 times a day. Now is the time for, that's a good idea. I've never thought of that in my business. I'm going to go make a list of the 6 ways I can maybe make that work in my business. Now, you might have to do that exercise 20 times to find one that works, right? But you just got to think creatively. Think outside the box. And the biggest thing is, like I said, is don't become paralyzed to it. And you don't need to reconfigure your business many of the times, right? This isn't the MyPillow guy now making masks, right? Most of us don't have to do that. But how can we reconfigure and think about our offers and how we take clients and patients and members in order to get the cash flow in that we can to survive. And now we're there when we come out the other side. So that's the biggest thing. Just, keep doing. Keep doing.
Well said. So, Travis, if somebody wants to get a hold of you, if they really would like to do some direct mail, some 3D mail, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way is to go get a copy of my book. It's completely free. No, there's not even shipping and handling. It's free. I just need a name and mailing address. If you go to 3dmailresults.com/book, so I'll spell that for you. The number 3, the letter D, mailresults.com/book. It's basically a catalog on steroids. It shows you all the stuff we do. It has some pricing in there, but then it's also of good value, good information on how and when and why to use a direct mail, things like that. So 3dmailresults/book, completely free. That's where you'd want to start. And then if you want to give us a call, our phone number will be there as well, and we got team members here that can help you if you've got a project you want to get done right away.
Well, I'm appreciative. I'm honored that you spent the time, Travis. Thank you. I know that you're doing mailings right now, so thank you for being on this.
We keep plugging away.
That's awesome. Well, until next time, remember, if you haven't added direct mail to your marketing mix, now is the time.
Thank you for listening to Megabucks Radio with Nina Hirschberger. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or to listen to past episodes, visit megabucksradio.com.